Welcome to Thursday Stomptish time.
Thursday Stomptish time. We got our cold snap.
Cold snap's still available. It's a cooler day, so
I feel like we're the only ones drinking it in this restaurant.
We're trying to help them out here.
So, anyways, it's a seasonal beer. We keep wondering when the seasonal end, but it sounds like it's not. But I'm glad to see everyone. We are still going through the story, and we're in the life of Jesus, so things are fun. They're building towards Easter and Good Friday, and it all will correspond to our Easter and Good Friday. And
so this week we jump ahead a little bit because we get into Triumphal Entry, and you got to wait another week before we get to Palm Sunday. But it crosses over, all right? So we got the end of the teaching and miracles moving into Palm Sunday. Yeah.
So with that being said, Brent Smith is calling.
Oh.
Do you want to talk to Brent?
Oh, I thought we were going to put him on live or something.
Hello? So with that being said, our Easter services, we will have our sunrise service. And what time does that start?
Oh, man, 7:15,
I think?
I was about to say 7:14. Don't we always pick a weird time?
Yeah, so whenever sunrise is on that day, you can look at the Weather Channel app, and that's when the service is. But then, and
we'll do that at the entrance
kind of
to the church.
Outside. It'll move inside,
and then we'll come inside.
It won't be cold. I know we've had some Easters that have been really cold outside.
Man, when we get a full playground, are we going to go put it back out there?
Yeah,
it's going to be a little
look
different.
For maybe a way we can do some of that. That would be.
Everyone's like, no, we'll be back under blankets again. We like this. But
so
regardless,
Good Friday at 7:00, Monday Thursday at 7:00, and
then first communion kids there, so that's exciting.
The Easter service in the later morning is at.
Oh my!
You think we would know this? We're going to be there one way or another, but 10:30 maybe.
10:30 sounds right. Easter breakfast in between. We'll have the Easter egg hunt back as well this year. So make sure you're bringing the kids and bring your appetite.
Yeah, it's on the website, but. I want to talk about where things are moving in our story, and last week Jesus was more of the teaching Jesus. You hear about his parables, we'd hear about his miracles, so but all kind of pointing to a greater lesson for us to learn. This time, things move a little deeper, a little heavier. You start to see Jesus moving towards Jerusalem. That's always marked with the Transfiguration. So what you have in the life of Jesus is once he gets to that Mount of Transfiguration, that's where James and John are there and Peter are there, and they say, "'Tis good, Lord, to be here." And there is Moses and Elijah that appear with Jesus, and he glows, he's radiant, if you will. And right after the Transfiguration, Jesus comes down from the mountain, and he goes immediately to Jerusalem, it says. And as he's going,
he points his face towards Jerusalem. Yeah. He kind of teaches as he goes along, but it's got one big point.
The whole point is going to the cross, essentially. Exactly. He's going to his death for his purpose.
And he keeps making these death predictions.
Right.
He keeps saying it over and over again, and it's one of those places where you look at the disciples and you're like, why do they not understand?
And they still don't get it. Right.
But the reality is there was no reason for them to really accept that or believe that, in terms of, like, they don't have a tradition. There's no Jewish tradition saying the Messiah will come and suffer and die.
Right.
And so Jesus is creating a whole new category of Messiah that they just, and it's not that it's not there in the Old Testament, it's that they never put the pieces together into a person. Exactly. And so Jesus is really, really pushing them, and then you see the resistance.
So but along with their resistance of ignorance, if you will, you start to see as he gets closer to Jerusalem, the resistance of those who are opposed to him just grows and grows and grows. And as Jesus is going to Jerusalem, his claim to be the Son of God, to be God-man, God himself, also is more bold. And so we get to a point where no one is guessing who Jesus is anymore. He is claiming to be God.
Yes.
The opposition is hearing it as such. They're responding as such. They're pushing back as such. The disciples are hearing it, but then hearing that he's going to die and are confused by what's going on.
Like, we get that you're saying the Son of God.
Yeah,
and we saw you on the Mount of Transfiguration.
We're there.
But you keep saying that you're going to die.
And that doesn't make sense.
Exactly. What do we do with these things?
So you have confusion, you have opposition, everything is kind of drawing to this, to the cross, to where everything kind of...
And you get the prefigurement with Lazarus, where Jesus actually raises Lazarus from the dead after he's been in the tomb. for how long?
3 days.
3 days. Okay, yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's all this stuff that's pointing to him, and I mean, what's interesting with the Lazarus story is you've got there where you've got many people who believe because of it, right? And then you've got the ones who, even though they just saw it, harden themselves against him,
right?
And it's one of those interesting little side points of, well, if I could just see, if God would just do this for me, then I would really believe and trust in him.
Well, and that's kind of where a good conclusion, I think, for us to start drawing.
Yeah.
Because in the end, what you find in the biblical time is that everybody is having to deal with and having to answer. And in fact, Jesus asks Peter and the disciples, who do people say I am?
Yep.
And then looks at Peter and says, Peter, who do you say I am? And he says, surely you are the Christ, the Son of God. Then that was one of the times he predicts his death. And Peter says, surely that will never happen. And that's the get behind me, Satan time.
Yep, the famous one.
But everybody's trying to deal with that. But that's the same thing that's going on today. Is everybody at some point has to deal with. Who do you truly believe Jesus is?
Yeah, exactly.
I was telling you before.
Oh, that's right. You used the phrase. That's why you're using it.
Yeah, and I'll, this is a story about a gentleman I met today. Actually, a member of our church asked me to go and share the gospel with one of his friends, and so kind of a unique opportunity. So I went and just sat and we talked and had a great conversation and really enjoyed meeting the gentleman. But he's what I would call an agnostic, meaning he believes in a higher power but doesn't know if he would define it.
What's that look like?
That look like? We talked for about an hour and 20 minutes, I would say.
That's a pretty good conversation.
It was real good, and looking forward to the next one. But we ended kind of with that question. It's like at some point you're going to have to come to a conclusion of who do you believe this man was? Either you believe he was a fraud, and I hate to, C.S. Lewis is,
liar, lunatic, or Lord.
Yeah, it's like but either you believe that the whole thing's made up and we have skewed this, or you believe that he is who he says he is. But at some point, those are the only two options. You can't ignore him. Yeah, you can't ignore him. Yeah. I think in life we sometimes will get in places where routine will ignore Jesus, and sometimes we need to be reminded of, hey, did you forget who it is that is Lord of the world and Lord over your life?
And so it's really relevant to say not just like other people who are non-Christians need to decide.
Right. Even as Christians, we need to decide.
Is he going to be Lord of your life, or are you going to make him into a liar, basically?
Am I going to be Lord of my life, or is he going to be Lord of my life? And who are we?
Because he has a claim. He's made a claim, and so we're either going to deny it or we're going to accept it, because every single sin ultimately goes down to the first commandment, right? You shall have no other gods before me. And so any other commandment we're breaking, it's because we're breaking that one.
Yeah, and if you've seen those gospel tracts, it talks about how the arrows go up and down between God and man, and when sin entered the world, the arrow goes from the man, circles, and goes right back to the man. Yeah. Meaning that man's desire was for man. Meaning when you find sin in life, it all boils down to that selfishness of, this is what I wanted more than I wanted to obey or follow or listen or let Jesus be Lord over me.
Makes me think of those old, did you ever use like the divine drama or anything?
I think
like
that's the one it is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I thought you just meant like generic Bible tracts or whatever, but those were powerful images. I still to this day sit there and remember the little person being the servant or whatever, and I remember the figure of Jesus the servant. He always had the crown on or whatever. So yeah, that's exactly. I'm sure we're thinking the same thing. We did that for confirmation, and it was with the old overhead projectors. I just remember the pastor sitting there and wheeling in the overhead projector and then showing us the images. And yeah, you're pulling it up right now.
Yeah.
Do you have the image itself? Shucks, anyways, no. But yeah, ultimately is who are we going to worship? And the biggest temptation is for us to worship ourselves and to make ourselves Lord of our own lives. And it sounds silly because you're like, no, I don't do that. But if we actually analyze life and we think about the way our actions go, if we think about the way we spend our time, if we think about the statements we make, or even the things that we don't do, then oftentimes the reality is we're making ourselves our own Lord.
So we do this in the mundane, we do it in the big things, we do it in the little things, but this is why routines and patterns, healthy routines and patterns are good. Going to church, the right routines and patterns are good. Going to church, surrounding yourself with people that will build you up. All those things become really important because all of us, I think, daily are constantly addressing the question of who is Jesus. Exactly. And ultimately, I think each of us have to decide in our own lives, who is Jesus for me? And what does that mean?
Yeah, I agree 100%. So, I mean, that's the claim in this, and that's the place too where sometimes people are like, why would they kill Jesus? Well, because the claim is not just be loving. Like Jesus was all about love. Jesus was all about love, and they killed him for being so loving. Well, there's a truth to that, right? Like he's forgiving people and kind of pushing their concepts of love. But then it's ultimately the fact that he says, I get to define all these things. I get to define what the Sabbath is. I get to define lordship. I get to be all those things, and I am that causes him to put him on the cross.
One of the things I said to this gentleman, I said, look, until you answer that question, I guess you can make up whatever religion you think is right.
Yeah.
Because there is no objective truth that lies within you. And so either be honest with the subjectivity of what you bring, the presuppositions of what you bring, or submit to an objective truth that's out there.
Yeah.
I said, so if you don't, and even if you subject to the wrong truth, at least you can be honest with yourself.
At least have the intellectual honesty to say what it is,
yes,
what your faith is.
I said, but to deny it all, then you're just making up whatever it is you want.
Yeah.
But so, anyways.
So a challenge in terms of thinking about like what spreading the gospel means for us this week, like sharing about who Jesus is, but also in terms of a personal challenge to ourselves. Like, what does it mean that God's Lord of my life? And I mean, he's got a lot of really stark challenges. So as you sit there and you go through this text, it's not just, you acknowledge him, but he has a lot of life application. I mean, he sits there and he talks about, the little ones. Will you believe like a little child? Will you welcome little children like me? Will you, he talks about divorce in this section even, it kind of seems random or whatever. The rich young man, okay, if I'm really Lord of your life, go sell everything, give it to the poor, and come follow me.
No.
I'm out, So, I mean, there's a lot of real kind of practical challenges in there.
Awesome. Yo, great stuff. Something to ponder. Appreciate it. Blessings to you. See you Sunday.
Yeah.